Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are going to learn about payments and payment gateways. So if you want to learn or if you want to understand how to integrate payments in your application, then this video is for you. In this video, we will learn everything related to payments, all the fundamental concepts, and by the end of this video, you will be familiar with the essential concepts and you will be able to explore the documentation on your own of different payment gateways, because there you will find all these critical concepts and terms that we will cover in this video. And in the next video, we will do the hands-on, we will see how to integrate payment in an application. So without further ado, let's get started. When we talk about the payment, there are many entities which interact with each other. The first of them we need to understand is the customer. Customer is you and I. Customer is going to pay for some services. Then we have the issuer. Issuer is a bank who is issuing a card to the customer. Now we are currently focusing on the card payments. We can expand the concepts later of net banking and UPI or wallet payment. But here we are focusing on the card. So issuer is a bank of the customer who issues a card to the customer. So it could be say HDFC or ICICI. The other entity in this case is the merchant. Merchant is offering some services and customer will use the services of that merchant, and then the customer will pay some amount to the merchant. Then we have the acquirer. Acquirer is the bank of merchant. So in order to accept any payment, merchant has to open a merchant account with any acquirer. Just as issuer is a bank of customer, acquirer is a bank of merchant. Then we have the payment gateway. So when the customer is paying, the merchant is actually redirecting that payment to the payment gateway, payment service provider, also known as PSP. So the payment will be handled by the payment gateway, and a merchant could be associated with multiple payment gateways. So for example, merchant could support Stripe, PayPal or Razorpay in India. So there could be n number of payment gateways that a merchant can support. The last entity in this picture would be the network, the payment network. It acts as the routing between the issuer and the acquirer, because ultimately the payment has to happen between the banks. Whether it is initiated by the customer, accepted by the merchant, the payment has to happen between the banks, and that happens with the help of the payment network. And there are multiple payment networks. Visa has its own payment network, and in the same way MasterCard has its own network. So when you pay via a Visa card, the payment gateway will use the Visa network, and in the same way when a customer uses a MasterCard, then the payment gateway of the merchant will use the MasterCard network, and all the payment related data will travel on the corresponding network. It depends on the card whether it is Visa or MasterCard. So here is a scenario of what we have discussed on the previous slide. So suppose I buy something from the Amazon using my HDFC Visa card. Then you need to understand who is the issuer, who is the merchant, who is the acquirer in this scenario. So in this scenario, HDFC is the issuer because I got the card from HDFC. Merchant is Amazon because Amazon is offering some services that I'm using. Network in this case is the Visa because I'm using the Visa card. And gateway or PSP, which is payment service provider, could be anything that Amazon supports. It could be PayPal, Stripe or Razorpay in India. So now that we understand the acquirer, issuer, customer and merchant, we need to understand the concepts of authorization and capture. Now this is something that happens between the merchant and the issuer. Issuer is the bank of the customer. Alright, so suppose a customer is buying something from a merchant. So what would happen? Merchant will go to the issuer, which is the bank of the customer, and it will say, does this customer have X dollars available in his account? If yes, can you lock it? Now when the issuer or the bank receives this request, the bank will check the account of that customer and it will see that okay, if the customer has the required balance or not. Let's say if the customer has the required balance, then it will return a response that yes, X dollar is available in the customer's account and I have logged it. Now notice in this case, although the issuer has logged the required amount, the amount has not been transferred yet. There is no payment yet. And this is called the authorization. Authorization is a process, a request made by the merchant to apply a hold on a certain amount, and that request goes to issuer. Issuer is again the bank of the customer. Alright, now after some time, it could be days or hours, let's say the service is complete and it's time to pay the merchant will go to the issuer again, and this time it will say that I want to actually take those funds. Now what would happen? Issuer will issue the amount and the merchant will eventually get paid, and this process is called the capture. So authorization is requesting a hold on a certain amount and capture is actually transferring that amount to the merchant. Now it's a two-step process so that certain scenarios can benefit from the authorization and capture, but as we will see in the hands-on demo, it's not always the case where you will split the step into authorization and capture. In many cases, as soon as the customer makes the payment, the authorization and capture would happen in a single step, and the amount will be deducted from the customer account and it will be sent to the acquirer or the merchant, as we will cover as we go on. So this is the concept of authorization and capture. Now here is another scenario. Say if I book a hotel with my card and they put a hold of $500 at check-in, but I get charged $320 at checkout. So try to understand what is the hold amount, what is the authorization amount, what is the captured amount. So in this scenario, authorization was done for $500 because this amount was logged. But at checkout time, you can see the payment was done for $320. So that is the captured amount. The remaining $180 is the hold that will be released at checkout time. So that is how authorization and capture works. So you need to understand that authorization is essentially a hold on a certain amount, and capture is the actual amount that you will pay, the actual amount that will be transferred to the merchant. So the next concept we need to understand is the clearing. Clearing is the process which is run by the network. So Visa would run its own clearing process. It could be end of the day, and similarly MasterCard or any other network would have its own clearing process. So clearing is the process where net obligations are calculated between all the required parties, whether it is acquirer, issuer or network. Clearing is essentially keeping a track of who owes whom and how much. In the clearing process, only the obligations are recorded, who owes whom how much, but the transfer does not happen in the clearing process. That happens as part of the settlement. Settlement is the process where actual movement of money happens between banks, and only after the settlement, the acquirer, which is the bank of merchant, has the appropriate funds so that it can pay the merchant. And settlement could happen T+1 or T+2. So that means even if the customer makes the payment, let's say using the Visa card, then as part of the clearing process, the transaction will be recorded on the Visa network, but the amount will be transferred only as part of the settlement that could happen on the same day or on the next day. So that is why the terminology is T+1 or T+2. So here is another scenario on the clearing and settlement. So say a customer buys something from Amazon using Visa card. HDFC issues the Visa card, so HDFC would be the issuer, and Amazon's acquirer is ICICI. So what would happen as soon as the customer made the payment, say authorization and capture were successful. So that means payment was done from the customer side. Now the third point is Visa network clears. This is the clearing process. So it knows that HDFC, which is the issuer, owes ICICI, which is the merchant, $100. So that will be the entry which will be recorded on Visa network as part of the clearing process. The actual transfer would happen as part of the settlement, which could be on T+1, T+2 or on the same day. And when the settlement happens, then the money will be moved from HDFC to ICICI, and there will be an entry or the record that now ICICI has the $100. Now notice ICICI is the acquirer of Amazon. After the settlement happens and ICICI has the required $100, then ICICI can pay Amazon, which is the merchant in this case, minus fees, because all the parties like issuer, acquirer or Visa or MasterCard, they charge a certain amount of fee for the services provided. Alright, so that is how the whole process works, from authorization to capture to clearing and the settlement. Now we will understand the concept of void and refund. So what is void? Void happens after the authorization. That means when the hold was placed on a certain amount, but before the settlement, that means the money has not been transferred yet. In this case, what happens? The merchant cancels the transaction before the money has actually moved from one party to another party. So in this case, what happens? The authorization hold is released and no settlement entry is created because the money has not moved yet. Now, an example would be, suppose you order something on Amazon and then you cancel after 5 minutes. Now, in this case, Amazon has not shipped the order. There was no capture because the money has not moved yet. So in this case, the authorization is removed, the hold amount will be released, and the authorization is called to be voided. So this is called void. Important thing to understand is this happens after the authorization and before the settlement. And in this case, there is no movement of money. Alright. A related concept is refund. What happens in the refund process, that in this case, the money has been moved. So it occurs after the capture and settlement process has been completed. That means the money has already moved to the merchant account. Now, what would happen in this case? The merchant would initiate a refund instruction, a refund transaction with the help of PSP, which is the payment gateway, acquirer, the bank of the merchant, network, it could be Visa or MasterCard, issuer, which is the bank of the customer. And as part of the refund, the funds will flow back to the cardholder, which is the customer's account. Now, in this case, because there is a movement of money, so as a result of refund process, the balance of merchant would decrease and the balance of customer will increase. So that is the outcome of the refund process. Suppose you buy something on Amazon, you receive it, then you return it. In that case, Amazon would have to initiate a refund transaction. So that is known as the refund. So the difference between void and refund is that in case of void, there is no money movement, only the authorization happened and the authorization will be released. And in case of refund, there is an actual movement of money from the merchant's account to the customer's account. So that is void and refund. Let's move on. Then we have another related concept, which is chargebacks or disputes. So what is chargeback? Chargeback is a forced reversal initiated by the issuer, which is the customer's bank, after the customer raises a dispute regarding a transaction with the issuer. So in this case, what happens, suppose there is a customer who raises a dispute with the issuer that I did not make a certain payment. Now this is known as a dispute. So after the customer raises a dispute, the issuer will notify the network, which could be the Visa or the MasterCard, that is the payment network. So the next step would be that the network will debit the acquirer, which is the bank of the merchant, and it will credit the issuer. And this is a temporary activity. Now merchant has some time that it has to provide the evidence that the activity happened, and that will happen via acquirer or the payment gateway. So in this step, the merchant has to provide some proof, whether it is invoice, the customer consent, or the proof of shipment. If the merchant fails to provide any evidence, then the merchant will lose the money and it will be charged a chargeback fee. We will cover chargeback fee in a second. But if the merchant is able to provide the evidence, then the chargeback, the temporary activity, the debit that happened will be reversed. Now, what is chargeback fee? So in case of disputes, if the merchant fails to provide any evidence, the money would be transferred from the merchant's account to the customer's account, and along with this, the merchant will be charged a chargeback fee. The fee will be charged by the acquirer and the network, and a frequent chargeback fee for a merchant is a loss of reputation. So merchants or any entity will generally avoid to pay chargeback fee. Now the key thing about chargebacks is that this is a forced reversal process. Alright, let's move on. So the last thing that we will cover on this slide is some fundamental security details that I will just mention here as a pointer, and we don't need to go into much detail at this stage. The term that you would have heard is PCI DSS, which is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. And this is a set of rules around how to store and handle the cardholder data, because this is very sensitive. So there are some rules how you can store or handle this sensitive data. And depending on how you deal with the data, there are different bands. Like SAQA means that you never touch the sensitive data and only PSP or the payment gateway has access to the cardholder's data. So what it means, we will understand in the hands-on demo, that when the customer is entering the payment information like card or CVV, your application does not read that data at all. It goes directly to the PSP or the payment gateway. SAQD means that you store some data on your end, which is very sensitive, very risky, because you now own the sensitive data. So you need to deal with the security, the audit, the compliance and everything. So that is PCI and DSS. Then the second category is known as 3DS, which is 3D secure. And if this is enabled, in this case, the customer needs to authenticate with some extra information like OTP, password or biometric. So these are the core things that we need to understand from the payment security point of view. There are many more, but we are not going to spend much time on those one in this video. So that's the bigger picture involving issuers, acquirers, payment gateways, and networks, all working together to move money safely from one party to another party. And the good thing is, as developers, we don't need to handle each and everything, as we will see in the hands-on demo that there are many things which are taken care of by the payment gateways. So this video will help us to understand the flow so that when we start coding, we know what's happening under the hood. Now in the next video, we'll move from theory to practice, and I will show you how to take these concepts and build a working checkout with Spring Boot and Stripe. So I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.